All right, welcome to episode 55 of the At Bat Podcast presented by WARR Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news as well as take a trip around the league. I am joined this week by Gabe Wilkins from the Open Run Podcast on WARR Media, as well as Chris Pennant, who hasn't been on in a minute. He, of course, since then has joined CHGO. He's done work for SB Nation, Secret Base, stuff like that as well. And he still has his own podcast, the SkyHook Podcast. So we'll start with you, Chris. How you been, man?
Riding the wave of White Sox, otherwise trying to, when it's not super smoky outside, trying to get outside.
No, yeah, it's been rough outside and all those, like, just every game, even like Pittsburgh. I was watching a Pirates game yesterday and the quality there was terrible. But Gabe, how you doing, man?
I've been doing good for the most part, just staying inside, like Chris talked about with this air, man. This is something to behold and see, because it's wild where you could go. You don't even have to go outside. You just open your window for a minute. You can smell the smoky air and stuff. Like, it's kind of wild. But outside of that, just been watching a lot of baseball and just chilling, trying to enjoy something and get outside whenever I can.
Yeah, no, and I think I might have mentioned it last week, but I was supposed to go to the Cubs Phillies game on Wednesday, and that was one of the contributing factors of why I didn't go, was the fact that it was so smoky. I was going with my sisters, so they were just like, "Yeah, we're not having this," and I'm like, "I don't blame you." So and good thing is, I guess the Cubs lost that game, so I didn't get to see that. You know what I'm saying? Like, every time I don't go to a game and they lose, I'm like, I guess it wasn't meant to be, because I'm like, I'm not trying to have that. But of course, Cubs were playing good, but then they, were playing well, but they came in and they got swept by the Phillies. So we'll start there. We'll start in the north side of Chicago, where the Cubs are 37-42. Look on the bright side of things, 11-6 in the last 17. But like I said, they've lost the last three. They swept the Pirates. So they've swept the Pirates twice in the last couple of weeks. And that seems to be like the highlight, because every other series has been tough. But they went out to London and they split a series against the Cardinals. And then they, again, like I said, come back and face the Phillies and just kind of like get that that lineup from the Phillies that I feel like has been underrated because of how they've been playing as a whole. Really, they were running on all cylinders, especially yesterday with Schwarber, Trey Turner, all those guys. So that was rough. Chris, let me get your thoughts on the. Did you get to watch any of the London series? Because I know me and Gabe talked about it. But like, what did you get? What did you if you were able to watch any of it? What did you take from that series in general?
It was tough because I wasn't able to watch. It was funny.
Okay.
I remember seeing some people who, when I was in New York, who were either going to go. We met a couple at Yankee Stadium who was from the UK, and they were just in town to watch the Yankees games.
Mm.
And I think they were talking about going because they stay around London now. And I remember I remember the London series of the past, and I was thinking about, since sorry to everybody out there, mamas and grandmama. Sorry, mom. I don't go to church anymore, so I don't get up early on Sundays anymore. But I just remember the old ones where it was like the stadium was kind of a bandbox, and so I was not surprised at the high scores. I think it was cool though, even though he had to leave the game early, Marcus Stroman. Just seeing the way he's pitched this year, and in that game, in that environment, I thought that was good. It would have been great if the Cubs had swept the Cardinals, but you get a split on a very away game, pretty solid.
Yeah, no, and I said me and Gabe we talked about it off air, so not on the show.
Right.
But Gabe, yeah, let me get your thoughts on the series as a whole. Chris mentioned, of course, Stroman left the game on Sunday, and of course the Cubs have announced that they're hopeful that he can make his next start. But what any takeaways from that series? I know, the games were early, so I think I remember you said you didn't see the 9 a.m. one, or you saw part of it or something like that, right?
I saw the majority of the 9
Yeah, majority. Yeah,
funny
okay.
enough, I woke up just in time to see that. And I caught 7 out of the 9 innings before I went to the ballpark to see the White Sox and the Red Sox in their series finale on Sunday, where Luis Robert Jr. put on the show. But I was impressed with the offense, even though, as Chris alluded to, they playing in a barn that was really open season, and the way Ian Happ was hitting, because he looked like he didn't want to leave London that first game. To be able to go up there your first 2 at bats and hit home runs, after not hitting a home run in a long time, that was a positive sign, I'm pretty sure, for Cub fans to see. And they took full advantage of it. It just was unfortunate that they weren't able to, sweep the series or win the 2-game series. But anytime you can split with your arch rival, you will take that, especially coming off of 3 straight series wins in a row. It's just unfortunate that, they weren't able to capitalize off that momentum going up against a Philadelphia Phillies team that is red hot right now and has won 7 out of their last 10 games, despite being 10 games back in a tough National League East division that the Atlanta Braves just seem like they don't want to relinquish for anybody and don't show any signs of slowing down after winning 9 of their last 10. But I was impressed with what I saw from the Cubs. It was nice to see Marcus Stroman on that stage. It's unfortunate that, he got a blister on his throwing hand, but I'm sure he'll be fine and find a way to bounce back from it. But I like the London series, and I hope it's something that they continue with other rival teams. I wouldn't be shocked to see if the Giants and Dodgers are next in that long lineage of tradition that they're trying to build from the 2020s onward.
Yeah, no, I think they hadn't. I think they've already. I think maybe rumored, but they reported teams that are playing next year in London are Phillies and Mets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So another division rival. I can see where they're going with it.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing as you though. The fact that I was like maybe it's probably Dodgers, Giants, right, that are playing, but they also have talked about a game in Paris. I think I don't know if they're starting as soon as next year. I don't know if it is next year, but if they did do that, it'd be kind of cool to open a new city with the rivalry like the Giants and Dodgers.
That's true.
So it'd be. I wonder, what's gonna happen there. I've also heard that they're considering also Japan again for a series. And yeah, and I don't know if what year it will be or whatever, but obviously, I think it was a podcast I was listening to. They said they're like, obviously, whoever has Ohtani's a lock. I'm like, yeah,
for sure, for sure.
I'm like, wherever he goes, if he's going to be in that series for sure, because that's going to be insane. Like that whole crowd, seeing Ohtani in Japan would be badass. So
definitely,
hopefully it happens. But yeah, no, that series, it was, like you said, yeah, you take a split. It is what it is. It was unfortunate that last game they were up 4-0. And there was just that second inning, I believe, where just everything kind of unraveled. There were some errors. Mancini, who just hasn't done much of anything on the offensive end and defensive end, this season overall, made a big mistake, and he even admitted it after the game. He was one of the contributing factors to the cost of the game. But man, it just it's one of those things where you watch that Cardinals team. And I don't know what it is with that card. I mean, it's just mostly the pitching, but then again, on Saturday, they didn't hit. Just really strange to see a Cardinals team like this depleted, because every year, no matter what, you expect them to be competing for a division. And especially in this day and age with this year, with how weak the divisions are, like the fact that the Cardinals are not competing whatsoever is strange to me. But at the end of the day, I mean, they sit still. Let's see. They still sit 9.5 games out in June. So, late June. So I wouldn't necessarily, count them as dead, but it's just, it is really rough to see their pitching. Their pitching has been just disappointing overall. And nobody's really hit besides maybe Goldschmidt. Arenado got hot, but yeah.
Jordan Walker.
Yeah, Jordan Walker.
Can't forget about that dude.
And he should have been up here longer. As you said, Gabe, last show, he should have been here. He should have been up here. I don't know why they sent him down, because who knows where they might be. Maybe a few games ahead of this mark. But Chris, I saw you shake your head. You want to say something?
No, you never. The Cardinals are never dead, man. You can never count them boys out. That's the problem, because it might be August, and then that lead will start to shrink or something. Mm-hmm. The Reds are fun. The Reds are exciting. Even when the White Sox played them before they were really clicking, you could see it with the guys that they had out on the field. Spencer Steer, Tyler Stevenson was healthy, and that was before they brought up Ellie De La Cruz. Mm-hmm. But they're still young, and they're still trying to put it together for a whole 162 games. And even as they're whack right now, like super whack, super extra whack, this Cardinals team could bring up creative player A in August who will hit like 325 and have a slugging percentage of like 512 or something crazy. And then they'll just creep back into the picture. You can never count these dudes out.
You're right. Especially anytime you got Paul Goldschmidt still on your roster and Nolan Arenado. And even though Nolan Arenado has not looked like the Gold Glove third baseman defensively, as we've become accustomed to seeing him through his first 10 seasons in the league, if he finds a way to, continue to get back to normal on the defensive end and his bat heats up as we go into the month of July alongside a Goldschmidt, you never know. And even though I know the Astros sent scouts out to St. Louis trying to monitor Paul Goldschmidt, and there's been some reports that maybe Houston would be interested in trading for him, if St. Louis was to stand pat and retain him with Arenado, which I believe they will do, and get hot, 9.5 games right now isn't that much to make up, especially in the NL Central that's moving up and down by the day and by the week, and has an inexperienced Cincinnati Reds team, as great as they are, full of young players that have never been here and done it before. So you can't count out St. Louis at all.
Yeah, no, and that is 100% true. And just the fact that the thing is with them is that they have the players to get back in it, right? There's a difference between a team that's, say like the Royals, for example, who are down and out, probably going to stay down. So then this team in particular, the Cardinals are, they're still competitive when you got guys on the roster like, Jordan Hicks, who can get hot, Jordan Montgomery, Jack Flaherty, Miles Mikolas. All you need is a few good starts from those guys. They're back in it. And, that when you talk about that lineup, I have heard again, I as well have heard murmurs when it comes to people talking about, will they have Arenado on the move? Will they have Goldschmidt on the move? Whatever. I wouldn't do that if I was them, because I'm kind of, thinking the same thing as kind of, it's kind of like how we talked with the White Sox. And you talked about it last week, Gabe, and I do want to hear Chris's opinion in a little bit about that. And with the White Sox is that, I understand if you don't want to, make any moves, it's completely understandable with the fact that, you're still in the race, and it's like, no matter what, the divisions are so weak that you have a chance. But to continue with the Cubs, like you said, Gabe, they played the Phillies, and this is a team that, I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about them because of the way they started the season, and they're, 43-37 right now. They, kind of middling in the middle right there. And it's just like, I still am fearful of them because of the fact that they went to the World Series last year. And they get into the postseason and anything can happen. I know Aaron Nola has not been himself, but he had he had a solid start against the Cubs. So it's just those types of teams are dangerous, if they just get in. And that's something that that's something that I keep hearing when it comes to conversations with the Cubs and what they might do at the deadline. If they're able to add a couple pieces, if they add a couple bullpen pieces, hell, maybe even a bat. Not that I think they would do that, but that's something they would consider, I'm sure, with guys like, guys out in the market, say like, even considering what the Blue Jays are doing right now. I'm not sure they would if they fall out of it right now. They're 10 games back, but they're still 45-37. I've seen people talk about, maybe are they willing to move Matt Chapman and still compete at the same time for a wild card spot? Who knows? That's just me throwing stuff out there, but hopefully they're able to come back and kind of, improve on that and get into a good spot. I know there was some bad news when it comes to the bullpen. They had to shut down Brandon Hughes, who was one of the main left-handers out of the bullpen there. Anthony Kay has stepped up and been that guy. And I think that's another thing that the Cubs might look into when it comes to, bullpen pieces they could add. And that's, that's where Roldis Chapman might come in. That's where other relievers out there could come in. But when it comes to starters as well, one guy that has been pretty disappointing so far this season in the rotation, for a rotation that's been so good. It's up there with the Braves, the top two rotations in the NL with the Cubs. But Jameson Taillon, he's been just very disappointing from all angles. And there's been, like people have talked about it. Like, is he hurt? He has a history of injuries. But what do you guys take away? I mean, Gabe, anything that you think might be going on with Jameson Taillon? I mean, this is a guy the Cubs are paying $68 million for a 4-year deal. And they have, a guy who has a career 4.05 ERA, has a 6.90 ERA right now.
I mean, I don't know what the issue may be specifically, as I haven't had the pleasure of watching a lot of Cubs games, but I do know whenever players change and go from a new league like Jameson Taillon did coming from the American League to the National League in the Central, sometimes it takes a period for pitchers to adjust, no differently than hitters. And sometimes you either do well or you either struggle. And in this case, it seems as though he's been struggling. But fortunately for the Cubs, they've been fortunate to have guys like Justin Steele and Marcus Stroman to hold it down as the 1-2 like linchpin of that Cubs starting rotation. And if you could continue to get some quality starts from the likes of Kyle Hendricks, you now have a three-headed monster that you can feel confident about moving forward with as you try and compete in the National League Central, in which they came into the day in which we recording this only 5 games back of first place. So they still have a shot, and I don't expect them to fully sell, especially playing in this division, which, as we've alluded to thus far on the show, is still there for the taking. And I think it's going to be there for quite a while. And this race is more than likely going to come down to the final days of the regular season, with so many of these teams being up and down. And there's not really one that you can fully trust to say at this time they're the overwhelming favorite to win it.
I think the thing with Taillon, and Gabe, you made a great point, is changing leads is always different. But I'm checking it now. I want to see what the stats are, because I've noticed this with Lance Lynn on the White Sox side. I think the fact that the unbalanced schedule is truly a thing of the past this year is making a big impact on pitchers, especially when you primarily would have pitched 19 games, so you make maybe 4 starts against the teams in your division, and in a division on either Central, American League or National League, you're going to have a better chance, 1, because you face guys a lot, 2, because you're facing teams that are relatively weaker than teams in other divisions. Now, the Cubs and White Sox are only playing these other teams 6 or 7 times, and you got to face the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Giants, the Padres, the Rays, all these other teams that might knock you around. And Taillon has had such a fraught career in general that he's had maybe 2 complete seasons, I think, one with the Pirates and one with the Yankees, that have been solid. And this year he's coming back he's still kind of working his way back from an injury he had with the Yankees, on a new team, new division, new pitching coach, new directives from the team. And I'm honestly not surprised that it's going this way. I would still have expected his ERA to be a bit lower, maybe in the 5 range rather than nearly 7. But Taillon is one of those guys. I'm not saying he's toast or anything like that. It's just, you've never seen him really put it together in the way that you want. And that's coming from me, not just as a White Sox, whatever. I've been following this dude since his Pirate days, and I've wanted him to come back and be a strong pitcher.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think that you make some good points with the change of scenery and all that. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just strange to me how bad it's been. It's not, yeah, I wouldn't be too much on it if it was like, he had like a 450 or like, yeah, you like you say like a 5. But he's just been getting battered around. I mean, he's in the sixth percentile in expected slugging. So he's getting smacked around. He's got a negative WARR right now. So hopefully he's able to turn around, because at the end of the day, I've heard it again from plenty of people, this rotation is already top heavy, like Gabe said, with Hendricks and Stroman and Steele, where you have a guy like Taillon have a few good starts, especially late in the season. And that obviously will make a huge difference for a team that's looking to get into the postseason. So hopefully in that case, hopefully that is the case. And they're able to do that. I know the Cubs sent down also Miles Mastrobuoni, who just hasn't done much of anything as well. They brought up Jared Young, so he had a home run in his first game back up. And so it's good to see that. Getting more guys a chance, because the Cubs, I saw an article today that they're still looking for answers at first base and third base. Yeah, they're really they don't have many options. Wisdom's on the IL. They kind of have tried everything at third base with Madrigal, and even Morel has been there. Belly at first base. So they're trying a bunch of stuff. It's kind of like a revolving door, but hopefully they're able to kind of get more established roles there, and because I think that helps the situation overall. They got three against Cleveland this weekend. Then they go to Milwaukee for July 4th week. And yeah, those are going to be. There's a couple series. How about this? With Cleveland, is the first time the Cubs play the Cleveland this season. You as Sox fans see Cleveland more. What would you say is the scouting report for the Cubs this week? Like what should they attack? What has been Cleveland? I know Cleveland has been similar to the Cubs in the sense. I mean, look just by record, right? But they're a team that's been mentioned around also with selling, where Shane Bieber may be on the move and stuff like that. But Gabe, what's something to look out for in this series if you haven't seen the Cleveland Guardians?
Well, I can tell you about a specific player that you need to make sure that you attack very carefully. Is a pitcher, and that's Jose Ramirez, because when he's hot, he can literally carry that ball club not only for the duration of a 3-game series, but over the course of a month. And I don't know if you had the pleasure of seeing yesterday, but the dude stole home.
Oh yeah,
extra innings. And Jose Ramirez, if you ever looked at him on tape, would be the last guy that you would expect to do something like that, in spite of the fact that he has the ability to move with the best of them. But that's a guy that's really going to be key to shutting down. Cleveland's not known as being like a heavy offensive juggernaut team. But if you can shut down Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor, you're doing your job. And if you can keep the leadoff man and Stephen Kwan off of base, you're doing an even better job, because the way that Cleveland beats you is by getting on base, taking advantage of the 90 feet, stealing bases, and getting little bloop hits and duck snorts of that nature, and driving in runs and driving in more runs off the swing of one bat, which is 9 times out of 10 coming from Ramirez or Naylor. This team doesn't really hit for power that much. They acquired Josh Bell over the winter. He's been a disappointment for them thus far, and up and down in stretches, but for the most part, they haven't really gotten much out of their offense. And one thing I can tell you, if you watch AL Central Baseball, Cleveland is the epitome of it, because a lot of these offenses are among the worst offenses in baseball, and what they do worse than most teams in the league is they chase at a high clip, a lot of pitches, which usually tends to lead to a lot of strikeouts. So Cleveland's a team that they have great pitching, and that's what keeps them in ball games, as well as great defense. And they play the game fundamentally sound. But that's a series, in my opinion, that's very winnable for the Cubs if they put up anywhere between 4 to 5 runs a game, and their pitching is solid.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I was going to say Josh Naylor, because I still have nightmares of him pretty much single-handedly beating the White Sox
Tell me about it.
the nightcap of that doubleheader 2 years back. But he and Jose Ramirez are the power threats in that lineup. Andres Jimenez is not looking like his all-star self from last year. That being said, he's still a quality player. And so then you have Stephen Kwan, who is along with Ramirez, one of the tougher guys to strike out in their lineup, if not baseball. But even he's got 45 Ks against 37 walks this year. And I think there was a game recently that the Sox struck him out at least 3 times in the same game.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild.
In May.
So they brought up this kid, Tanner Bibby, who already is 11th on their team in WARR. So that kind of tells you what's going on with the Guardians. No Tristan McKenzie. So you get to Cal Quantrill or Aaron Savali, then you have a good shot. Cleveland's pitching staff has been their strength, their calling card. Even really since the World Series year, it was coming from the top. And now you have to be able to get to Quantrill or Savali. And Savali's still been kind of in and out. Quantrill's had a decent year. And then you have this, young rookie Tanner Bibby, whose ERA is just about 4. So if you get to those two, put up runs early, and don't have to deal with the bullpen, then you've got a good shot.
Yep. And I'm glad you bring up the bullpen too, because you don't want to get down in the 9th or even in the later innings in the 8th where you got James Karinchak coming in and then Emmanuel Clase coming in to lock things up, because he's one of the best closers in the business. And that was a guy that was an all-star last year. I believe he led the American League if not all of baseball in saves last season. So you don't want to get in trouble with those guys and have at least a 3-run deficit going into the 7th inning.
I hate that dude, Karinchak, man. I just wanted to say that. I hate him.
Man, hey, I'm with you. Cleveland's one of those teams. They are annoying pest to deal with.
That dude is doing too much. I'm sorry.
You know, Chris, I mean, yeah, we can have a whole conversation about Karinchak because, yeah, he might be doing too much just in every way, shape, or form. But anyway, yeah. But, yeah, no, you mentioned Gabe. Yeah, Emmanuel Clase, every time I watch that dude pitch, he's nasty. I don't know. It's one of those guys that, like, you just don't know how people even get a hit off that guy. Even in a 1-run game, it feels like the game's over. So, yeah. That's one of the things, you know, hopefully they're able to do it. I know Justin Steele, as we're recording this, is on the mound against Quantrill. So hopefully the Cubs are able to start that series with a win. And of course, like I said, they have 4 against Milwaukee on July 4th, Milwaukee, who they haven't seen since April. So that's good, you know, some more division games for a couple teams that are fighting for that division crown. So hopefully that goes well. The White Sox, 36-47, they're 5-4 in their last 9. You know, they played the Angels, are coming off a series against the Angels where, man, I mean, they were able to split the series, but it doesn't matter who won that series. Ohtani won that series on his own because that dude was insane. I mean, 8 for 14 in the series, 4 home runs, and he had that 10 strikeout performance. I mean, that was just incredible. I mean, from you guys, I watched, like, I think 2 of those 4 games full on, but from your guys' end, you know, you can't really say much more about Ohtani because, I mean, we've said it all. But when you watch a series like that where a guy goes that off and makes history as he did with the 10 strikeout game and the 2 home runs, what were you guys' takeaways from that series as a whole, as well as just a performance by Ohtani? We'll start with you, Chris.
You said who? Shohei Ohtani? Because all I saw was Luis Robert.
Yeah, I saw him too. We can't forget about him.
No, I'm lying. I think I didn't see in person. I saw highlights from the Monday and Tuesday games, and I watched Wednesday and Thursday. And so the pitch that he hit out on Thursday in the 9th, because I expect Kendall Graveman to give up runs or at least give up base runners, especially after getting the 2 strikes. He is the new Damaso Marte. He will just get to 2 strikes and then guys will get on somehow. But the pitch that he hit out wasn't even a bad pitch. And what mystifies me the most about Ohtani is the way that he swings. His whole swing just does not look to me like he should generate that much power as he does. But boy, he is, like, if you stood him next to Patrick Mahomes and had Mahomes just throw one and Ohtani hit a batting practice fastball, first of all, it would be good TV. Second of all, I think Ohtani just wins that battle because he hits good pitches 425 feet. That's the wild joint about it. What was it? The Tuesday night game, he took a pitch that was off his inside thigh pretty much and hit it out into the seats and right. And they were like, I remember them talking about it on the radio. Luke Hansen was like, yeah, if he hadn't hit that pitch, it might have hit him. And that was after he'd come out of the game that he was pitching in because he cracked his fingernail.
Exactly.
The dude is otherworldly. Like, when they talk about the best players and you just can't conceive about it, you can't conceive of what they're doing, even in this day and age, he might be an alien. He might be an alien for real.
Yeah, Shohei Ohtani's on another level, man. Mm-hmm. There was a time in my life where I felt like the hype may have not been warranted. Mm-hmm. But over the last year and some change, I see why. And I don't know what it is, but every time this man plays the White Sox, he wants to have a field day.
Did you see he's had 16 home runs against them in 32 career games?
Yeah. Oh, I'm well aware of it because I remember in 2021 in the rubber match of the opening day weekend series that the Sox had in Anaheim, he pitched a gem and he had a field day then, you know, where he had a multi-hit game and whatnot. So whenever Shohei Ohtani plays the White Sox, you always have to have your fingers crossed. And the home run that he hit yesterday, it made you say, thank God for insurance runs, because if they don't score 2 runs in the top part of the ninth, he ties the ball game with that jack. So, he's one of those guys where you pretty much have to be careful of pitching in the strike zone with him, because he's going to deposit it and make you pay for it more often than not when he makes full contact. And it's a very effortless and smooth swing. And the thing that's fascinating to me with Ohtani is I can only imagine how deadly he would be of a hitter if he was just more disciplined at certain times. Because when the White Sox were getting them out, they was getting them out, making them chase off-speed pitches low and away in the zone. But everything in the zone, he hit. Like the pitch that he hit on Dylan Cease, it was a well-placed pitch. He just took it out and tied the game. And that was the only mistake that Dylan Cease made on Monday night. But it was a nice showing between stars. And we talk about Shohei Ohtani, but we also have to talk about Luis Robert too, man. What this dude is doing in a White Sox uniform is incredible to behold. And he's looking like a player who, if he continues on the ascension that he currently is on, could be the best player to ever don a uniform in the history of the franchise. And he's a natural, and I have to say that, man. Like I show my grandmother his highlights, and she's like, man, it's something about the sound of his bat when he connects on a pitch. And I know what that sound is that she's talking about, because I heard it when he was in AAA Charlotte. And when it's getting to the point with him where now just being in White Sox games and watching him and having seats off of the left field line and seeing the home runs and the tape measures that he's hitting down the left field line, and he's doing it mostly with his forearms and strength or whatever. Like sometimes he's barely keeping balls in fair territory. That's how hard he's hitting them. And that's how quick he's connecting. But just to hear that pop, man, it's getting to a point where you can't even leave your seat when you watch this guy at bats, whether you at home or you in the ballpark. And it's been a special sight to behold. And I think he's slowly elevating himself as one of the best athletes in the city on the professional sports scene. But I was impressed with the way that they were able to close the series, considering how potent that Angels offense is, not only with Shohei Ohtani, but Mike Trout, who made life a living hell on White Sox pitchers throughout the series and accounted for 3/4 of their offense throughout that 4-game series out in Anaheim.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And Gabe, you mentioned the crack of the bat, and you're right. That's one thing I've noticed with Luis Robert. Like the way it sounds when he hits a ball, it's the same sound you get from guys like Acuna and guys like Ohtani himself, right? Like just that crack of the bat,
like
it just sounds different. Yeah, it's like it's crazy. So yeah, he had 5 hits in that series, including 2 home runs. So he had himself a series as well. So yeah, it was good to see them bounce back and and split that series, especially after coming off a series win against Boston. So hopefully they're able to build off that. One guy I did want to ask you guys about, because I hadn't noticed how good he was playing, how much better he was playing, is Benintendi. He's quietly had a great June with an OPS of 803. Overall has a 721, which again is above league average. And he's hitting 316. So can you guys talk a little bit about Benintendi and like what he's meant for this team kind of in this month, and how much more he can do, because there's plenty more left in the tank there this season. Because I mean, we've seen what type of player he is. But Chris, what have you seen from Benintendi?
No, he's only hit 1 home run. You know what I'm saying?
That's most fans.
Yeah.
Like it's better. It is better.
Yeah.
It's hard though, because we knew he was a doubles guy. We talked about this in the wintertime, right? Like those 5 home runs from last year, along with the 305 average. In this day and age, it's hard to stick consistently unless you're a Luis Ariz type guy who's going to hit everything, who's going to hit around like 370. Like Benintendi's batting average is solid. It has been on the come up. Even with 20 doubles out of his 81 hits, it's hard to make it count on a team that doesn't drive you in and make those hits stand up. So it's good having Benintendi on. I think it would be better if the White Sox were contending, and that's what throws his contract into very sharp relief, because you gave this guy the largest contract in team history, but he is not a franchise-changing player. That's the tough part. So on the surface, good. It's really good for him. I think that I've seen him hitting the ball with a bit more authority. I think that putting him in the leadoff spot when you can is better for him as well. Give Chima Anderson just a chance to clear his head and get himself right with a little bit less, either less pressure or, not having the impetus of being the first man in the box every night. And then when you can rework it, I think you can strip those roles back and Benintendi will still hit. And then you have a table setter in front of him like Tim, who, if he gets on first, could easily score in one of those Benintendi doubles. But I'm happy that he's having a better June. I just wish it would translate more to the team as a whole.
Oh, I agree when you talk about the team as a whole. The offense has been the number one thing that's held this team back. But in spite of Andrew Benintendi's lack of hitting for power, I think Benintendi's been one of the more consistent hitters in his lineup. And he's one of the few guys on the team where it doesn't matter where he bats in the lineup order. He finds a way to work counts. He finds a way to get on base. And the only issue has been when he gets on base is whether or not he can be drove in home. And that's an indictment more so on the guys that are hitting in the heart of the lineup, 3 through 5, needing to be more sound, needing to be more disciplined as hitters. I think a lot of the guys on the White Sox can learn a lot from Andrew Benintendi, because to me, he's the most sound hitter on the ball club. And that's the reason why he's able to bat leadoff right now and do exceptionally well. I think a lot of fans forget Benintendi had a stretch in the middle of May where he was like on an 8 to 9 game hitting streak. And the White Sox were winning. But that's because of what? They were driving them in. And the one thing that I will say that I've taken over these last 2 games, the way they closed the series in Anaheim, is that the offense showed up. Anytime you could put up 11 and put up 9 runs, that's a positive sign. And that marked the first time that the White Sox have done that in the month of June. Because I was talking with a friend of mine prior to this Angel series, and I'm like, the last time the White Sox scored 10 runs or more prior to this Angel series, you have to go all the way back to when me and you were in Detroit, Saul, and they won 12-3, which I believe occurred on May 26th. It was a Friday night game on Apple Television. And if that's going to be a thing, then that's a problem. You got to do that consistently. This offense is too damn good to just be rolling in the mud and not being able to execute in positions where you have runners in scoring position in less than 2 outs. This has to continue to be a trend if they want to go up and find a way to steal a division that's there for the taking.
That's the thing, man. Like I talked to my partner and I feel bad because she was already going to White Sox games primarily over the Cubs. But when I got season tickets, she got more into it. And now she's calling them the boys team. Like, we see how the boys do tonight. And now she's in. And I feel so bad because she's like, well, at least they did this. And I'm like, that's not enough. The team should, it should be better than this. Like,
I know the feeling.
Like, what boys is better than this.
Yeah,
and
I know the feeling.
And I don't want to take the happiness away from her when they do win. But I'm like, I
know the feeling. I'm there every weekend, Chris. I had that same feeling. When they lost last Friday 3-1 against Boston, and they were like 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position, leaving like 7 runners on base. I couldn't even stay to watch the fireworks show, man.
No.
I'm looking at the box score as I'm leaving 35th, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Something has to change. And then, even when they hit for power in the month of June, it was a lot of solo shots as opposed to 2-run homers and 3-run homers. And you could tell whenever they hit 2-run homers and 3-run homers, it made a pivotal difference in ball games, even ball games that they won by 1 run or 2 runs or less. And a lot of the games in the month of June have been so close, man, that when you get a win like you do the other night, 11-5, and you realize that's the first win all month long that the White Sox have had by more than 4 runs, you will take that.
Like, that's crazy, man.
Yeah. It's a grind.
Yeah. No, and that I can definitely see what you guys are talking about when it comes to that. I mean, this team is, it's so like up and down, and especially with a guy like Luis Robert, and like you would think that you would look at his numbers and you'd be like, man, you would think that it would translate to more wins, and it just hasn't happened, in general, and hopefully, that like as Gabe said, that he doesn't see them selling, he doesn't want them to sell. They're still in this thing, and at the end of the day, whatever they do, they're still going to be in it, because I think this division is just as bad as the NL Central, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, look, you want your team to be in it. So, and I will say too, it's good to see as well. A guy like, is it just me, or every time Sebi Zavala hits a home run, he hits two?
Yo,
that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. The man has 13 career home runs, and I believe 7 out of the 13 home runs that he's hit have come in 3 games. If you include the 3 home run game he had against Cleveland in 2021, the multi-home run game that you were on hand to see, Chris, where he hit 2, and my friend Dominic was behind home plate. We were talking about that after the game, like, man. And then the home run that he hit against the Angels, that second one, that was a foul ball that somehow curved back around the foul pole, was like, wow. If this dude did that like once every 3 weeks, I think a lot of White Sox fans would love him. But the problem is, he'll have a game like that, and then the next night he go 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I really like Sebi. I thought that he was going to be one of those backup catchers that would hit like 240, and you saw his power last year. And the year before that, he had a home run in the Field of Dreams game.
Right.
He had that Cleveland game where he hit 3 home runs. But it's just fallen off the table this year. And so it was really nice to see that game in person, because, I mean, just the first home run was like, we lost it in the smoke, first of all. And then it was like, oh, wait a second. And then it's out. And then the second one, it was just like, no doubt. I was like, oh, well, Sebi's back. He's going to get on a run. He's going to get that average up. And then it's just still been, pretty down. So I would like to see for him to have a good second half. I really do want that, because I think that would, if Sebi Zavala is hitting, that means he's getting pitches to hit, which hopefully would mean that the guys in front of him are also getting pitches to hit, which means the White Sox lineup has figured things out on a holistic basis.
No, yeah, you're right. And another thing too, with the Sox, I just saw Liam Hendriks as well. He's going to receive the Jimmy V Awards. That's cool to see. The White Sox are going to go, going to play the Oakland Athletics for 3, and then come back to Guaranteed Rate Field to face the Blue Jays for 3. A sidetrack. I want to ask you guys, what did you guys think about that? They unveiled it this week, but the Indiana Vaughn bobblehead, I thought that was pretty badass. Not gonna lie,
that was funny. That was funny. I wish I could have got my hands on that one, because I was at the game on Sunday when they gave it away, but I believe it was only to people who had purchased tickets in the outfield. That was pretty cool. I've been seeing a lot of Indiana Jones themed things across the ballpark. They've been promoting the hell out that movie across the major leagues. And like the bobblehead itself, the Giants had one that was similar to it with Jock Peterson that I thought was kind of comical as well. And then Mr. Met, and then the Mariners had one of like Logan Gilbert in the Indiana Jones outfit. So like, I see that's been like a major league wide trend, and I guess they've been using Major League Baseball as a way to promote this movie.
I wish I had gotten one. I couldn't make that game, but Indiana Jones, like I always tell people this. I wear baseball caps all the time, not just because I like baseball, but because of my dog Short Round from Temple of Doom. Always had that Brooklyn Dodgers hat on, and that was my guy. I didn't everybody's like, oh, that's Dana from the Goonies. I'm like, no, that's Short Round. He was a beast, bro. He beat the brakes off that Prince dude in the cave, and he told old girl, you call him Dr. Jones, dog. That was my guy. So I wish I had gotten this one. I hope the new movie is better than Crystal Skull, and I've heard that it is. So that's all I'm concerned about.
I like how they had the in the little the unveiling of it with the video on Instagram. They had the Rock chasing after him.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was pretty cool. So yeah, you love to see that type of stuff. I know the Cubs haven't done Indiana Jones night, but I know they had a NASCAR night. I wasn't too excited about that, not gonna lie.
They did one on the north side too, huh? Because they had a NASCAR night on Friday night against the Red Sox.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was like, they had like a Clark bobblehead, but I was like, still not as cool as the Indiana Vaughn, not gonna lie. So it is what it is. But to wrap up the show, I want to talk about a little bit of the All-Star stuff that's gonna happen, and just in general of what some thoughts we have on the All-Star starters, because they were unveiled on Thursday. But before we get to the All-Star starters, I do want to ask you guys about the home run derby. They have yet to unveil the whole field, but I wanted to get you guys to see if there's a couple of guys that you want to see in that home run derby. If it's Chicago guys, that's fine. But if there's a couple of guys that you think from around the league, and I'll start off easy. If I had one guy from Chicago that I would want to see in there, from my team, I'll say from the Cubs. You guys can select from the White Sox, because I think it'd be pretty easy for the White Sox who you want to see in that. There's a couple guys actually from the White Sox that we've talked about we would like to see. But for the Cubs, I think Christopher Morel would be a pretty good guy to have in the home run derby, because that dude looks like he can hit BP balls onto Waveland and Sheffield like all the time, like easily. And that'd be a great guy. I mean, he's got 13 right now. So hopefully it's some guy that gets some thoughts on getting and joining that. I know Mookie Betts officially joined the field. And I know Randy Arozarena has thrown his hat in. They have yet to. I think he said he was waiting for an invite. But I mean, hell, if he wants to be in it, I'm sure they'll let him in. But Gabe, who do you think, or who would you want in the home run derby?
As far as my personal wants, I know he won't do it. He stated that he won't do it. But I would love to see Luis Robert Jr. do it. I think it would be great for his profile. But I can kind of understand him not wanting to do it, because I've heard a lot of guys talk about how after home run derbies, it can kind of mess up your swing a little bit. So I would say, as far as Chicago guys are concerned, I would either go with Luis Robert or Jake Berger. I think those are the two players that are most deserving. As far as like non-Chicago MLB players, I would go with Matt Olson of the Atlanta Braves this year, who's been on a tear. And I would go with Jorge Soler, a guy who hasn't really gotten enough credit for the power that he's exhibited over the course of his career. And I think that's largely been attributed to him being in and out the lineup so much due to injuries, but is having a great year in Miami, hitting 21 home runs, which is good for fifth in the league, tied for fifth actually with Kyle Schwarber, and is driven in 46 RBIs and is hitting over 240. He's a guy that has a ton of power, and I'm sure a lot of Cub fans are familiar with. Those would be the three guys that I would like to see, though. Jorge Soler, Matt Olson, and Jake Berger, if Luis Robert doesn't want to participate in it. And I think the White Sox are deserving of having a player participate in it when you consider the fact that those two guys have produced more power through the first half of the season than any guys on the team last year in 2022.
Yeah, I'm with that. Soler, since I've only had to really see him a few times a year, I think the funny thing is, Gabe, I think that people realized who he was once he got traded to the Braves and they won the World Series, and he hit that just like I don't think I've ever seen a crowd silencing home run like that.
I remember
the one that he hit in Houston. Like, you felt the air go out of that stadium so fast. And, I remember people talking about Soler power when he was young with the Cubs coming up, and people were really excited about him then. And then he led the league in 2019 with the Royals. So I would love to see Jorge Soler in this. I think that he would hit some of those just majestic shots that people like to see, especially in a place like Seattle that has a pretty deep left center field. But that home run porch and left, that would be fantastic. Like, having him out there. I like Pete Alonso. I just like Pete Alonso. So I would like to see him in it. And then, yeah, like you said, if Luis Robert was willing to do it, He's not, I know, but that'll be cool. But Jake Berger, to get him, some traction, I think, because he had that really, really hot end of May, beginning of June, and he's cooled off, but he still hit a lot of home runs for what is right now a fairly tail-end team, and he would be like Daniel Palka steroids in the home run derby.
Daniel Palka, White Sox legend. he's up there with the Josh Fields, those types of guys in there,
Shout out Joe Borchard.
Joe Borchard. So yeah,
stadium record.
Man, Joe Borchard. I remember seeing him when I was a child, when my mom worked with the franchise, and he was their top overall pick. And he came in and took BP. Some of the tape measure shots this dude hit. It's amazing to me how that dude never found a way to stick in the league. Cause if you ever saw this man take BP, you would have thought that this was a 10-time All-Star in the making.
Baseball, man.
I know.
It doesn't make sense sometimes.
It's a lot of guys like that I saw, yep. But Joe Borchard was one of them guys that definitely stuck out. Just watching him take BP, he had lightning power. He hit one of the deepest home runs I've ever seen in that ballpark, deeper than the one that he hit in the actual game against the Phillies.
Yeah, and you're talking about lightning power. The other couple of guys from around the league that I thought would be great candidates for the Homer Derby. One is a guy we've talked about, Gabe, as well, as Adolis Garcia. I mean, that dude hits a rockets. Yes, and I think he'd be great for the T-Mobile Park to see a guy like him try to hit that Edgar sign and left, because I mean he could hit a liner down there. And another guy I want to see that I feel like his power is not talked about enough, because obviously his whole game is exciting. But a guy we talked about, Corbin Carroll. I mean, that dude has 17. He has 17 bombs right now, and I think he could put on a show. Not only that, but he's from Washington State, so I think it's another thing So that's another reason that he should be in it, and I think he could put on a show as well. And that's another thing too, with him, is that I feel like his power, like I said, it wasn't talked about enough, and I think that might be one of his strongest suits when it's all said and done. Just watch, because I feel like the way this dude hits, the line shots that he hits, I mean, that dude is just so good in every facet of the game, and I think his power is going to speak for itself when it's all said and done this season. So those are a few guys, but those are definitely some good choices on there, and hopefully Luis Robert changes his mind in the next couple seasons, because that dude is made his swing also, I feel like, is made for a home run derby, because it looks like he the way his stance is, I feel like he could set up easily, back up again real quick, right? He'd be this, knock one out, and then
he don't have to do too much,
up, right? Yeah, exactly.
He got a real relaxed swing. It's violent when he connects with the ball.
Exactly.
It's nothing herky jerky. Everything is fluid when he's connecting on a pitch.
Oh yeah, very, very smooth. So, the last thing we'll talk about is the All-Star starters. They were unveiled on Thursday, and in the American League, I'll go just down them real quick. At catcher, Jonah Heim. At first base, Yandy Diaz from the Rays. At second base, another Ranger, Marcus Semien. At third base, Josh Jung from the Rangers. Shortstop, Corey Seager from the Rangers again. Outfielder, Aaron Judge, who, of course, probably won't play that, unfortunately. The outfielder, Mike Trout, as well, from the Angels. And then the outfielder is rounded out by Randy Arozarena. And then the designated hitter, who got the most votes out of everyone, Shohei Ohtani. In the National League, Sean Murphy from the Braves. Catcher at first base, Freddie Freeman. So shout out Miles. I know he's happy out there with the Freddie Freeman. At second base, Luis Arraez from the Marlins, who's deservedly there as well, leading the majors in batting average. At third base, Nolan Arenado, who we mentioned already, from the Cardinals. At shortstop, Orlando Arcia from the Braves in his first ever All-Star game. And then the outfielders are Ronald Acuna, of course, Mookie Betts from the Dodgers, Corbin Carroll from the Diamondbacks, and then the designated hitter is JD Martinez. So I want to ask you guys, there's plenty, not necessarily surprises, but I think at the beginning of the season, I think if a lot of people were saying, hey, maybe we'll see something from the Rangers, but I still think if you would have told a lot of people that the Rangers were going to have 4 starters in the starting lineup of the American League All-Star game, they still might be surprised, and deservedly so. And we've talked about it before. They're one of the best teams in the AL. They're the second best team in the AL. They deserve to have as many All-Stars in there. Then they have more than the best team in the race. So that's good to see for them. In the National League, obviously you got the guy who might hit 400 this year in Luis Arraez. A guy like Orlando Arcia, who wasn't talked about a lot, I thought, a guy like Perdomo would get more votes there. It was the guy from the Braves, which makes sense. That the Braves, one of the best teams in the NL and just in baseball overall. But Gabe, any surprises for you or anything that stands out from these starters in both the American League and the National League?
For me, I can't say I'm too shocked that Texas has several all-stars starting for the American League, especially when they have a 5-game lead in the American League West, which is one of the toughest divisions in baseball. And one thing about the Rangers, they do have a following in that Dallas-Fort Worth area. And when they have good teams, those fans come out and they support at a high level. But funny enough, my biggest surprise actually came from Texas, and that was Jonah Heim. I was very surprised that he got elected as a starter. I'm surprised not only that he got elected as a starter, but that this guy has been not only one of baseball's best pitch framers, he stepped up immensely at the plate this year. He's batting .279, 11 home runs, has an OPS over 800, and that's over 284 plate appearances, which marks for the major's highest scoring team. And the reason why I'm shocked is because I thought a guy like Adley Rutschman had a serious case.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I believe Adley Rutschman will get in as a reserve, Adley Rutschman, to me, ever since he's came up in Baltimore, that team has taken off and been a force to be reckoned with. So that was the biggest surprise for me, is seeing Jonah Heim get in. I wasn't surprised by Orlando Arcia getting in, playing with the Braves, best record in the National League, and he's batting over 300. But Jonah Heim was a guy that, as much potential as he has and has shown over the years, has finally found a way to put it all together, and it's been cool to see it culminate in his first All-Star appearance.
Yeah, and I was gonna say with Jonah Heim is, I think what helps him the most, and not to say Adley Rutschman is not talented in the defensive side of things, because he is, and he's only getting better. I think Jonah Heim these last 2 seasons has been elite defensively, and I think that's probably one of the things that's helped him out. I mean, that's one of the things probably that stands out the most with his WAR, because his WAR is 2.3 right now, while Adley Rutschman is 1.8. So probably the one thing. I mean, I don't know how much that goes into All-Star voting and stuff, but I'm sure it's a contributing factor for some, and I think that does help him in that end. But yeah, I mean, and I will say this, Gabe. I think if I had to put money on it right now, Adley Rutschman's going to start way more than Jonah Heim. No offense to Jonah Heim. He's a great guy. He's a great, great player. But Adley Rutschman's only getting better, and he's so young. So, yeah, I think he'll be fine. But, Chris, any surprise or anything that stands out from these 2 All-Star starters?
No, I had the thought about Jonah Heim too, but I remember nodding when I saw it, because there was a series. He had 2 game winners in the same weekend, I think his rookie season or his second season. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, who is this kid? Like, he's got good power, and I think his average is around like 230, 240 that year. Mm-hmm. But I've not been surprised to see him have the season, at least the start to the season that he's had, because I could kind of see it then. I made a mental note just to keep his name in my on my radar, and so I would check his stats from time to time. And it seems like the right time. I didn't expect this whole experiment that the Rangers have going to work. I didn't expect it to pan out as well as it has with Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. I mean, unfortunately, again, we've seen Jacob deGrom go on the IL for long term, but everything else is worked out really well for them, and it makes sense that Heim is a centerpiece of that. So no real surprises from me.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think yeah, there wasn't too many in general. I mean, I think a lot of teams deservedly so got their deserved starters here, especially with the Rangers. I mean, I think they're a team that, like you said, I personally as well, I was on the same boat, Chris, where I didn't know if this was this year where they were going to kind of take off, but the fact that they're taking off and without DeGrom is just crazy, and I think it's cool to see because of that. We've talked about this. Their stadium, they have a new stadium. I think, as Gabe said, they have a big following. So it's good for Texas for that to happen, and for the Rangers to have their starters there. In the National League, it was good to see guys like Corbin Carroll, like I said, a guy from Washington to play in the, to be as a starter. How about JD Martinez, who a lot of people didn't expect, I think, for him to take off with the Dodgers still. I think a lot of people saw him going there and maybe being a little bit of a contributor, but not as much as he is now. He's one of the best hitters in that lineup right now. So it's cool to see for that. And for a guy like Corey Seager, who year in, year out see a lot of injuries, it's good to see him as a starter, and he's on track to play as well. So that's good to see. I'm just excited for this All-Star game that's coming up so soon, man. It's almost like it's less than 2 weeks already. So can't wait for that. And hopefully that is a great event in Seattle. So I think that's a good place to wrap things up for this edition of the At Bat Podcast presented by WARR Media. I want to thank my co-hosts today, Gabe Wilkins, who of course you can see on the Open Run Podcast, and of course Chris Pennant, who you can watch on the CHGO Sky Show as well as his podcast, the SkyHook Podcast. And appreciate you guys coming on. And for the At Bat Podcast, Saul Rodriguez. Hopefully everyone has a great weekend. See you next week.